The demise of Frieza felt liberating to everyone involved. I mean, after the evil Galactic Emperor had been defeated, what more was there to worry about? Well, there was Goku's fate, which was at this point a little bit uncertain, but Shenron believed that wherever his friend was out there, he must be doing something important. The last time he caught a glimpse of him, his friend, was on some distant planet getting some kind of training of sorts. It might come in handy in future, the Dragon Man thought. Porunga's second batch of wishes included giving himself a new form, reviving Chaozu and Tenshinhan, and finally recreating Namek for its inhabitants. They would get said home with the next wish on either of the dragons, which gave them an extra 6 months to spend on Earth. And during that time, the two, Porunga and Shenron, became very good buddies, though their personalities were considerably different.
Do you question your role? Once you have the body and the mortal perspective?
Lang shifted his head during one of their training sessions between himself, Porunga, and Piccolo. The larger of the two laughed loudly.
Not really. It is weird, I give you that. Now with my new master being in charge, I don't have any issue with serving the people of Namek and rewarding their greatest warriors.
What about the time thing? Shenron lowered his voice.
What time thing?
He was clearly very tactless and didn't know how to regulate humanoid voices.
You know, when you start experiencing time, you start to see how impermanent everything feels. Even if we don't age, all the things and people we care about around us will be gone someday. Memories vanishing. I can only remember important things without being able to exactly recall a day from the last week. Things are moving very fast for me. Oh, you think way too much about that. You are still a dragon at your core. You're just watching everything from a closer perspective,
Porunga said, throwing a few punches that almost cost Shenron his balance. The leader of the dragons sighed.
That's the thing. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm not quite human, I'm not quite dragon. You want my advice? Just focus on the stuff you're good at. I'm good at fulfilling wishes and punching people, as we have discovered. That is a good thing.
Would you be pleased if someone like Frieza got that wish?
These are the rules and stipulations, my friend. If our creators allowed that to happen, they should be ready to live with the consequences, should they not?
Piccolo, who had been completely silent throughout this entire exchange, finally decided to speak up.
I think it's up to you to decide, Shenron. You're more than the intentions somebody made you with. And trust me, I know something about that.
Porunga laughed.
Not good, Nail. Planting rebellious thoughts in the mind of our friend.
Stop calling me Nail.
He is part of you. You are both Piccolo and Nail. Just as he is, both a dragon and a man. Can he walk two paths?
Porunga gave them a toothy grin.
I guess we better find out then.
Still, despite the Namekian dragon poking holes in their logic or testing them in some way, they did enjoy their mutual time spent together. It was a challenge on both a physical and a mental level. They knew they would miss him once he was back on Namek with his people, but such was the nature of things. People came and went. The time to say goodbye, though, was nearing mercilessly. And that did not help Shenron with his fear at all of things being temporary. It wasn't paralyzing by any means, it was just existentially chilling. But still, the fateful day did come, and it was time for Shenron and Porunga to say their goodbyes.
Well, I hope you will remember what we have learned together, my friend.
The Namekian dragon grinned.
I will try. Take care of your people. They're going to need you now more than ever. Oh, I will. Also, maybe someday you can visit us.
Shenron smiled.
With how the planet is hidden right now, that would require a wish to do so.
Porunga shrugged.
Well, then you'll have to convince one of your friends to ask for it, or maybe spend some time venturing the stars through space and maybe get a little bit lost, if you know what I mean. Either way, it was an honor spending time with you, cousin. Likewise.
And with that, Porunga transformed back into his draconic self and teleported himself and the Namekians back to their new world. Shenron, meanwhile, felt incredibly uneasy. It had been some time since he last spoke properly with Kami, and they hadn't really met up after his resurrection. He wasn't called to the lookout or anything like that. He wasn't particularly needed, he thought. His training with his dragonkin had took over so much, but now that it was all done, he felt a little bit aimless, honestly. But that did not last for long though, because a mere few weeks after the Namekians left, our heroes, including Shenron, felt a familiar, ominous aura. And this time, it was even stronger. Somehow, can't explain why, Frieza had returned. Lang, together with Piccolo, had met up with the remaining Dragon Team members on the planet at a place north of West City called the Northern Wastelands. Sometimes Shenron thought that the Earthlings should get a little bit more creative with the names of geographical landmarks, he thought. There wasn't really much innovation in that front, but still. He had no time to dwell on the nomenclature of land, as Vegeta revealed that this time, Frieza would not be here alone, as this time, he would be accompanied by his father, King Cold, the true grey eminence of the Frieza Force. Which, of course, made Shenron and Piccolo very glad that they had been training extensively for the last 6 months. Just as the two had arrived and witnessed the landing of the ship that had been carrying the two tyrants, a new challenger appeared, one completely unrecognizable to all. A young man dispatched the soldiers quickly, accompanying Frieza and his father without much of an issue at all. This had been an extensively huge shock for everyone involved, as the individual didn't even seem to be threatened by the Emperor himself. It felt like he'd been completely running the entire thing on easy mode.
He's either very brave or very stupid.
Piccolo crossed his arms, not entirely impressed with the bravado on display.
And clearly hiding his true power. There's no way that we couldn't have detected someone who had dispatched so many Frieza soldiers so easily.
Shenron was giving a beady eye to the young man, not reacting to the taunts thrown at him by Frieza in his new cybernetic body. That or those who died on Namek were the main ones. Krillin tried to sound optimistic. Maybe they were just, somewhere else.
I'd like to remind you that I hunted a good bunch of them, bold one, Vegeta muttered.
Their bickering was then interrupted by the ease with which the young man avoided Frieza's attack. And his transformation into a Super Saiyan. Yeah, that would do it. For Krillin, Gohan, and Shenron, there was no doubt. Even though Vegeta seemed to be in constant denial, there was another Super Saiyan. And it wasn't Vegeta. And this one might be even stronger than Goku, as he cut Frieza in half with a single strike of his sword and blew away the remains. And soon after this, he agreed to show King Cold his sword, just to show the evildoer that he posed no real threat to him whatsoever, and disposed of him in an even more timely manner. The invasion ended before it officially began, actually, leaving everyone stunned. And after noticing everyone, the young man smiled, being much more at ease and happy to see some friendly faces.
Hey, Goku's gonna arrive in about 2 hours. Let's meet him here together, okay?
Was this young man their friend's friend? Okay, well, that felt hopeful. Maybe he was a new student the Saiyan had acquired on his journey through the stars, and they decided to meet up here back on Earth. If so, Shenron could only imagine how powerful Goku had become, if Frieza could just see that. Any attempts at getting anything from the boy, though, in terms of clues about his identity, had proven to be rather fruitless. But still, Lang couldn't feel ill intent from the individual, as if he had a good reason not to reveal his identity. And sure enough, in almost exactly 2 hours, Goku had arrived on the planet. Man, could this kid see the future or something? Well, just wait, folks. But Goku seemed to be as surprised as everyone by this mysterious visitor, so okay, he hadn't met Goku before, so who in the heifer was he? But before everyone could greet their friend, the mysterious stranger asked for some time alone with Goku. Initially, they just, from what they could see, were testing out their strength and Super Saiyan forms, comparing the size of their levels. Seeing them both next to each other cemented the idea of this newcomer truly being a Saiyan, which angered Vegeta even more. Piccolo, though, looked toward Lang.
Should we listen in? You know I can use my hearing. I'm not sure if you can. He asked for secrecy, Piccolo.
Shenron shook his head.
And we'd only just met him. Better safe than sorry.
So Piccolo decided to listen in. And the dragon really didn't like this, but it wasn't like Piccolo could just turn off his hearing or anything. That's why he took a deep breath and reluctantly listened in. What he learned from that was more than he signed up for. Time was coming back at him with a vengeance. It turned out that this boy, Trunks, as he was called and chose to identify himself as, was from the future. And not just any future, but a very bleak one at that, where almost everyone that they knew had died due to a new threat that hadn't yet graced this world. Would this cycle ever end, thought Shenron? Apparently, some adjacent Red Ribbon Army scientists had built some kind of powerful android machines that had destroyed almost every fighter on the planet, with Goku himself succumbing not to them, but a mysterious heart virus he gathered in space. And not only that, but Trunks himself was the son of Bulma and Vegeta. Both Bulma and Vegeta could feel Lang's stare on both of them, which prompted the prince to react.
What are you looking at, you overgrown lizard? No, nothing.
Shenron coughed loudly. Well, how did that happen, he thought. Well, these mortals were weird. They're confusing. And not only that, but part of Shenron felt as if some sort of natural law had been broken. On one hand, he appreciated that this boy had traveled all the way to the past to try and save them from their certain doom, trying to give them a fighting chance at least. But on the other hand, speaking as from something that used to be non-corporeal, should mortals have that kind of power? Wasn't that a sin against time itself? But then again, it meant that time was not undefeatable as Lang started to worry. His existential crisis was coming back again. But their original fate was to die for some mechanical menace. He couldn't let that happen. This hardly seemed fair, thought Shenron, and it spiraled the dragon down into an even fouler mood. Goku is given the heart medicine, and Piccolo decides to tell everyone the abridged version, just omitting the details about Trunks' parentage, which in the long run could make this weird pairing not happen. So that was a good decision in Shenron's book. Yeah, don't let that happen. Also, Bulma, being the pretty sane and grounded person that she was, suggested that maybe they could just simply seek out the laboratory where the androids were created and just destroy them before they get the chance to attack and inflict any harm upon the world. But Vegeta protested this, saying it would take too long and take up valuable training time, meaning that Lang rolled his eyes. They could just simply wish on him and they could gain access to him in his dragon form and he could maybe find them, yet no one even tried to defend Bulma's idea. But deep down, Shenron knew exactly why. These mortals, wanted to test themselves out against a brand new threat. It was one of the traits of the Saiyans, and let's be honest, it had rubbed off onto the human Z-fighters as well, that they liked risking the fate of the planet for their own personal strength and gains. But on the other hand, they had more time to train, so maybe some classical methods would work in solving the problem, just hit them really hard. Especially how complicated this thing had already become because of the introduction of time travel. Maybe the wish could complicate things as well, maybe even more, spiral into something that could haunt them, and maybe unravel the entire dimension that they are living in already. And Shenron wasn't fully sold on the idea anyway, but at least he now had some kind of goal. He was no longer aimless, so that was something. This time between Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, and himself. And during these more peaceful times, Chi-Chi decided that the three of them, that is her husband, the Namekian, and the dragon, should maybe get driver's licenses. And surprisingly, he was the only one to pass his driving test on the first go, which he commemorated with a lovely photo. During his free time, he decided to create his own little album, using some of the pictures that he had taken over the years, and most importantly, finally drudging up all the photos that he had taken on his Namekian visit, and that means Chi-Chi could actually see them. She'd been longing to. This was his way of winning, in a way, keeping those small moments away from the merciless temporal grasp. The following 3 years were unusually happy, despite the threat looming over everybody. Shenron had still been avoiding Kami, and the Guardian himself really didn't seem to be trying to force his presence for the lookout. It was like he was keeping his distance deliberately, but still, Lang, who now was openly calling himself Shenron, as people eventually discovered, had a chance to also train with different kinds of Z-fighters outside of the main group. He especially wanted to help out Yamcha with his self-esteem, having had that little tete-a-tete during the Saiyan saga, as he believed that this young man could do with some help in that department. He remembered his wish about reviving every victim of King Piccolo back in the day, not only his closest friends, and he decided that he could really do with some motivation and personal time. He even shared some of his techniques with him. But Piccolo was a little skeptical about the dragon taking the bandit in as his protege, but it had turned into a really good working relationship. And he even joined in with some of the more advanced training sessions that they had. They had a lot of time, but it did eventually pass, and May the 12th of age 767 was upon them. Allegedly, the androids were supposedly meant to show up on an island not too far away from South City. Again, with the boring names. So the Z-fighters decided to split up and patrol it in order to better cover the grounds. Shenron decided to go with his new student in order to boost his confidence. And sure enough, the two of them did spot a duo of suspicious-looking fighters with baggy pants, not really fitting with the rest of the city at all and causing some problems. An old man and a large jester of sorts. Well, they of course went straight for Yamcha, and by some miracle mistaking him for Goku, yet the young man was able to fend for himself long enough for Shenron to join in the fight, and of course, save him from getting a hole in the chest. The geezer, who seemed to be more aware of the two's identities, seemed slightly shocked by this level of defiance and defense, because Lang was able to fend him off and his clown quite skillfully. In all of the chaos, they decided to go for the city's infrastructure to force both Shenron and Yamcha to use this opportunity to save the citizens of the island, and maybe these two could make a quick escape. But still, all of this noise had attracted the attention of the other Z-fighters, who then started to give a wild chase after these two machines. So much for cover. Shenron, though, was content. Maybe defying fate was possible. Maybe he can do even more impossible things along the way. After all, today he had already proven that he was capable of such feats. He had proven that a machine could feel fear. And that's where we're going to be leaving things for right now.